Hi, I'm Tina Hill, and you're watching My Life with Tina Hill, and my guest today is Suzanne Taylor. She's a certified sommelier. What exactly does it mean to be a certified sommelier, and what does a sommelier actually do?
Well, about 40 years ago, the Court of Master Sommeliers was formed in London to sort of improve the quality of wine service in restaurants and hotels, around the world. In my case, it was a 6-month intensive study program, and then it's 3 days of exams. And the final day is the certified sommelier exam, where you're required to, in the first 45 minutes, blind taste a white wine and a red wine, and then, accurately identify what type of wine it is, where it's from, what climate the grapes were grown in, and the structure of the wine. And then you have to also finish this theory exam, which is written, and a lot of it's questions that you write out, not multiple choice. Multiple choice would have been handy, but no. And then you go and do the service part of the exam.
What is it about the service, though? What besides just pouring a bottle from the correct side of someone, what makes the service part of the exam so difficult or accurate?
It's I think a combination of retaining all this wine knowledge and being able to converse with your patron or your customer and figure out what it is they might want to drink. So you're solving a puzzle, but at the same time you're doing this choreographed dance around a table. But it really is hard because they ask you some really random questions right on the spot, and you have to sort of come up with an answer. And you don't always have the answer, so you have to find a graceful way of saying, you know what? I don't think we have that particular vintage or bottle, but we have this one. Would that, work for you?
There's champagne, sparkling wine, Prosecco, Cava. What's the difference between all of them? Is one better than the other? If I wanted to celebrate something really special, does it have to be champagne or?
Well, it depends on what your tastes are. I mean, champagne, Prosecco, and Cava, of the three, champagne can only be called champagne if it's produced in Champagne, France. Cava is produced in the same style with a second bottle fermentation. First fermentation happens in a tank, and then they bottle it, and some more fermentation happens in the bottle, and then they extract the lees and put the final cork on it. And when that cork goes in, it's straight. And when you pull champagne cork out, it looks like a mushroom.
Right.
It's all the pressure in that bottle that reforms the cork. Prosecco, on the other hand, and some cremants, which is another style of sparkling, are made just with one fermentation in a tank. And the goal there is to sort of preserve the quality of the fruit, sort of the youthfulness of the fruit, whereas in a champagne, they're looking for a house style. A lot of them are blended. Wine lists can be really intimidating, especially if you get like a Bible that's this thick and you're like, oh, I can't even turn the pages. I think when in doubt, think locally. If, most wines were developed to go with food. We've been, man's been making wine for about 10,000 years. So don't be afraid to ask your sommelier for help. There's nothing wrong with that, actually, because that's what we're here for.
So the locally, like if I'm having tapas, or if I'm in a Spanish restaurant, try a Spanish wine. If I'm Italian, try Italian wine.
Absolutely.
That kind of
Greek wine. And it's easier to sort of think of those, pairings, given that, most of Europe has been producing wine, and most of those cuisines came up with wine. But when you get into Thai food, for example, which can be spicy, you want to probably try a wine that's a little off dry, like a Riesling, for instance. It's got a little bit of residual sugar in it, sort of to, beat the heat, as it were. I think that you want to match the power or the weight of the food. If you're going to eat a heavy dish, say like a big T-bone that has a nice, marbled fat, running through it, you probably want a big red wine. Yeah. Probably a Cabernet Sauvignon, because you need sort of a combination of acid, and the tannins help sort of combat the fat, because fat coats your mouth, believe it or not, and that way it will enhance the flavor of the meats, actually. Wine's one of the few things that can actually enhance the flavor of foods. It's actually the main beverage that can do that, not the other ones. Probably why I'm obsessed with wine over cocktails is because of the food complementary, the food pairings. I'm a foodie to begin with, and that sort of is probably why I started exploring wine.
Would you drink a boxed wine?
I
Is there
certainly
anything
have.
wrong with them?
No,
Or must it be a bottle?
No, it does not have to be a bottle, although I've had some really good Rieslings. Mainly it's really this one good Riesling that I've had in a box wine in recent memory. But I think they came up with boxed wines to sort of, it was an environmental move, because you can sort of have more efficient packaging with a box wine. You can certainly get, I think there's usually 4 liters as opposed to 750 milliliters that you get in a bottle, you know. And I think that as long as it's, you know, you're planning on drinking it fairly quickly, not, I mean, with a party or whatever, again, you have to sort of know your producer and know what you're looking for.
What about the ones that are a few dollar bottle of wine? Is that a good bargain, or are they just not up to par?
Well, you know, there is a point of diminishing returns. When you get a really super inexpensive bottle, chances are it's been produced as a commodity, not necessarily as like a bottle of wine per se. And sometimes with those larger commodity productions, there might be more chemicals that you find added to these wines. There are some really excellent value wines that you can get under $10 that are fantastic, but when you get into the $2 range or the $3 range, I think you might want to pause for a moment. I think, you know, the $6 and up might be a safe territory.
Would that be a good sangria kind of wine, a $2 or $3 bottle, or not even?
If you're not willing to drink something on its own, you shouldn't cook with it or make a sangria with it. That's kind of the rule of thumb. It has to taste good on its own.